I'm gonna start
We're
recording.
we're rolling.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we're good.
So Kathy and Fred, thank y'all so much for meeting with me this morning. And again, I did not write down any questions or ask anybody if they had questions for y'all because I don't want us to put y'all in a corner where you're just giving us information we think we need because y'all really probably know the information that we need to know in the counseling sessions when we have parents, grandparents, friends of people who have addiction. The last thing probably I would want to know or hear are some of things like boundaries and things like that. But I want to open up so y'all can introduce yourselves and then we can start from there.
Hi, I'm Cathy Leamnson. I'm married to Fred Leamnson. We're the founders of the POW group. We began in Virginia and we live in North Carolina, but we still have the large group going.
And when she said founders of the POW group, that's the local group. We're part of a national organization based in Phoenix, Arizona. It's powgroup.org if anybody wants to check it out. And it was founded by a guy named Mike Speakman, who himself is a recovering addict. And after he started recovering from alcoholism, he decided he wanted to give back and became a licensed addiction therapist and had a practice for 35 years. And in the course of having that practice, he realized there was a real gap in help for families and specifically parents. And so he created PAL, I think 15 years ago. They're now in, I believe it's up to 40 states nationwide. Some groups are online, most of them are in person. Our group in Northern Virginia started in person, and then when COVID happened, everything shut down. We had to move online, and we now have people from, off and on, we've had people from a half a dozen states. So we just kept it online, so we didn't have to lose any of those people. Our story is back in 2007. Um, Kathy just had a premonition that something was going on that wasn't normal with Jason, and she thought he was addicted. So she confronted him, and he went ballistic and denied it, hung up the phone on her, and then a short time later, hour, 2 hours, whatever it was, he called back and admitted it. And that was the beginning of our understanding of his addiction. But before that, and that was in 2007, before that, we got a call from his college roommate who said, and he called Kathy and said, Jason's in trouble. He's been dealing pot and he's in debt to some very bad people who, if he doesn't pay his debt, are going to come after him. So I I hopped on a plane, flew out to Indianapolis to check him out. And what I found was just hard to explain. He was living in a squalor. He had dishes piled up everywhere. There was literally dust caked to the floor. He had a dog, and it was just a train wreck. So we decided to pack him up and move him back to Virginia. As it turns out, when we moved him back to Virginia, we moved him back to where his drug dealers were. So it just made it easier for him. He lived with us, and essentially we were enabling him to find his drugs and do things more easily. So in 2007, when a parent first finds out about it, you're just in a state of shock. And then it's like drinking out of a firehouse. You have no tools, you have no understanding of what to do, how to do it, and all of that. And so for a number of years, we made every mistake in the book. We bailed him out financially. We co-signed on a lease for him. We paid off his drug debt, all of it
Paid
to the
off his
tune of,
all of his schooling.
And your thought was what behind that?
Our thought was to not let him have any pressures of any kind. So hopefully that would bring him out of and away from doing drugs. Because we were thinking he was doing the drugs because he had so much, all this negative pressure, and that we thought we could save him from himself.
Hmm.
The goal was to fix his addiction. I mean, if you
Yeah.
really want to break it down, the goal was to fix his addiction. And so we went down that path for a number of years to the point of financial ruin. And in our mid 50s, we filed bankruptcy and had to start over in our early to mid 50s. Um, and that's the story for a lot of parents because it all happens so fast and you're in it so quickly that all you're trying to do is put out fires and help them. And until we found PAL, I went to Al-Anon, I went to Celebrate Recovery, all are great programs. But what was missing was there was nothing that dealt specifically with parents. And parents have a different take on things.
Yeah.
The other thing I didn't like about Al-Anon is you're sitting around in a group and you say the Al-Anon, saying before you start the meetings, and then one person shares their story, and then all that happens after that is they say, thanks for sharing, and you move on to the next person. There's no interaction, there's no conversation about, yeah, I've been in that situation, here's how I dealt with it. There's none of that. So I walked away empty. I didn't get anything. Sometimes conversations afterwards would happen, but in the meeting itself, it was very controlled. And look, it's a great program for a lot of people. If that's what you're looking for, it helps you feel like you're not alone, and that's a good thing. But I'm an interactive person. Kathy's an interactive person, and it was just missing. And I asked over and over, is there anything for parents? And there wasn't. So we went back to Indiana in July of 2018 when my father died, and met with some good friends of ours he's a counselor, runs a counseling service at our old church. And he told me about Powell. And when I got home, I looked it up, said, this is exactly what we're looking on for. In August, we both took the facilitator training and started our own local POW group in September of 18. So
So
we're going
what,
Can I
on
can I
8 years.
can I say something? I'd like to go back a little bit. I know Fred's kind of given all the history, but before that time, before we found PAL, I'd like to talk to about how it affected me as a mother.
Mhm.
And not only is this PAL program for parents, it's also for a spouse who has an addictive loved one. So it's not just for parents, it's for
okay.
people dealing even with maybe a family member, a brother, a sister, whatever. We've had that. So it's not just for parents, but I'd like to speak about when we first found out, and we first found out that Jason was actually using intravenous drugs, heroin specifically. It was very traumatizing as a mother and I think, as parents. And it was you felt lost and you had no idea what to do. I mean, zero. And you realized all of a sudden, this is not the child that I gave birth to.
Did you
This
feel
is
helpless and hopeless and
totally
Mm,
helpless.
your world
absolutely.
was crushing, wasn't it? It was,
Oh, it's horrible,
uh,
horrible. And I mean, I can't tell you how much Fred had to watch me go through such an emotional state. I let myself, I let him manipulate me so bad that I was living in that addiction with him. It was literally
what does
killing.
that mean, Kathy? You were living that addiction with him.
I was trying to figure out, okay, I felt like I was carrying his burdens for him, physically and mentally, because I wanted to get him out of this. I wanted to save him. There was a different relationship between me and Jason than Fred and Jason, okay? I had Jason when I was 15. So Fred was the stepfather. And um, seeing Jason in my nightmares shooting up intravenously was very scary for me because that's how his biological dad was. And Jason used to watch him when he was a kid. And I knew this. So that was my worst nightmare. And so when I saw all this happening, my worst nightmare of my whole life just came true. So I was so totally crushed, you know?
Yeah.
But I felt like that I was just living this with him constantly because he was constantly calling me. He was constantly hounding me for money, constantly badgering me all the time. I finally got to the point that I had gained so much weight, I had lost control of my health, that Fred had to give me an ultimatum. Fred was watching me deteriorate very fast. And he said, look, it's either me or Jason.
That was
I,
hard.
it was very hard, but you know what? I needed to be shocked
Yeah.
to wake me up to realize what was going on around me because I was living it in it so much
Hmm.
that I couldn't see it.
So
I
Fred,
could
when did you get
not
the
see it.
ultimatum all of a sudden? Was it all of a sudden or what was
It
going
went on, it
on?
went on this, what she just described was probably over
Multiple years.
4 to 6 years, I guess.
So it
Yeah.
really
And
came between in the marriage then.
Oh, yeah.
yeah, and I was gonna, that's the point I wanted to bring up because he- hearing our situation, we hear this situation all the time from our parents and pal. You mothers give birth and you have a connection to, I mean, I adopted Jason when he was between 10 and 11. So he's not my biological son, but he's my son. And so we had that relationship early on. And my relationship with him, Kathy made a good point, is different than hers. And this is where the manipulation comes in because what addicts know how to do is, is find the weak spot and exploit that weak spot. And
Oh, yeah.
that weak spot was Kathy. And so he would work Kathy, and then Kathy would work me. And
So the
we
cycle.
It was a dance.
we describe it as being on a hamster wheel. And that's what I think, unless you've lived this, whether you're a young therapist or you're a well-meaning friend or other family member, we have this vision of what parenting is like. And when you deal with an addict, that parenting style doesn't
Out the window.
work.
Doesn't
And
match.
Oh, no.
so so what we say in our group is that you have to learn your addicted loved one differently than if you have other kids than your other kids. Because once the addiction takes over, the person before the addiction is gone.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that people just don't understand. You see the person physically and you think it's the same person, but when they're addicted to drugs, the only thing they're thinking about every day is where am I going to get my next fix?
Hmm.
And that's the other thing that, people say, well, they made a choice to start, they can make a choice to stop. That's just not true
No.
because once the addiction takes over, the term we use, and it's difficult for people to get their heads around. They are deathly afraid of getting dope sick. What happens physically if they don't get their fix, particularly the longer one uses, the more they need to maintain their physical, so they don't go into physical withdrawals. So when that last hit comes, if you don't have something in the hopper for the next time, and you have to you'll do whatever it takes
Yeah.
to get the
Get that.
money to get whatever you have to do. So you lose your job, you lose your
Relationships.
everything falls apart
You
because you're only
steal,
thinking,
constantly steal. I
Mhm.
mean, Jason stole so much stuff from our home. We had no idea. It was walking out the door.
So, so what y'all lived through, he stole from you, your marriage was being severely negatively affected, if that's even a phrase we can use. If it was awful. And so an ultimatum came. And so y'all found pals. And I think one thing that you said is parents do come to pals, and like our clients could come and they're saying we want to know how to fix our son or our
Right.
daughter. And so
Right.
what are y'all's thoughts about that?
Well, we kind of giggle a little bit at first because we're always used to that. And Fred always kind of has everybody talk to him first a little bit to make sure that they're going to fit into the group because we have members that have been there a long time. And a lot of the members, we let the members kind of really share their stories about when they first came to PAL because most of them come in saying the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they realize once they get into the meetings and the group, they realize, oh, this is about taking care of me. All of a sudden,
So
oh, they
what
have to
clicks
come to
for them?
realize,
What
they have
click?
to, yeah, they have to realize, oh, my son and daughter's an adult now. I've got to let them learn to adult themselves without me.
How do you think y'all came to that conclusion? How your parents come to that conclusion? Because in the therapy setting, it's hard. We're pushed to do all these research-based therapies and these books about boundaries and stuff. And I often say, well, no, we've got to meet folks where they are. We've got to really
So
get a secure
I'll address
relationship
that.
with them.
I'll address that from both perspectives, from the addict's perspective and from the parent's perspective. You can't fix them. And over the 7.5 years we've been doing this, there have been several parents who have tried intervention to force them into recovery.
Not even inviting
Or
them into their own homes, letting them live
Oh,
with
yeah,
oh,
them.
we did that. We did that. And the
everybody
reason
does.
you do that is you think, well, if I've got them in my home, I can watch them and I can protect them. And it's just a fallacy because we had Jason in our home and then he got arrested and went to jail. Our son has been in and out of jail when he was in his active addiction for heroin. He was in and out of every county jail in the contiguous counties around DC and
Well,
Northern
he
Virginia.
spent 3.5 years in prison.
And the reason was he was having to steal things and then sell them to get money to feed his habit because he's lost his job and all that. So when he moved out, Kathy went down to clean up the room and she found old needles and empty
Blood.
packets with empty packets with residue in it. So they were shooting up in our home, and that puts us at risk. Okay, and that's something parents don't realize. And I'll give you another very sad story. And this has happened. We've
Nine
lost count.
times.
7 or 8 of our members have lost their loved ones to addiction,
It's
to overdoses. The last of which was in October of last year. Her son was in jail and got out of jail in August. She agreed to let him come back home with certain conditions, and all indications were he was doing everything right. He was working for a job. This woman was a widow, and a husband left trust fund for the son, and so he had some money to go do things. He was looking for a job. He bought a car. All things were appeared to be going well. She came on Saturday, one Saturday afternoon. She went in his room about 5 o'clock and he was on the bed. She thought he was asleep. She tried to wake him and he didn't wake. He had died of an overdose. She didn't know it at the time, but she did know it, right? She thought he was good, everything was fine, and he'd overdosed in her home. So you can't protect them by having them in your home. It just
No.
doesn't work. And
Would you
so
say it makes the addiction worse?
It makes it
it
easy.
makes
It
it
feeds
it
into
makes it
it.
easier.
Makes
Makes it easier for
It's the
them to do.
quintessential enabling.
Yeah.
You think you're protecting them, but they don't have to pay rent. You're providing all the food. They don't have to worry about
They have more
No.
anything. So
resources to feed it then.
Oh, yeah,
exactly. So all of
exactly.
those things you think are helping, you're actually making it easier for them because they don't have to do any of those things on their own. And we think by preventing them to having consequences, that's going to help them. And it's just the opposite. And that's an
Totally the opposite.
incredibly hard thing for parents to realize. And so if someone in the beginning of this tells parents you got to set boundaries and they give them all this advice, they're not going to hear it
No,
because
they're not going to listen to you.
What would
it's
what
in
would
fact
you?
it's gonna drive them away. More
Yeah.
relationships are ruined because of that. And it's well-meaning. And in time you realize it's well-meaning. But when you're in the midst of it, that is the last thing you want to hear.
I'll tell you what we do, Julia, is what we do is we let them come, we know why they're coming in, why they think they're coming in. And we let them go through our lessons, the 9 lessons throughout, and they hear other parents start talking. We recently just had a new couple come in. They had their son in their home, right? And she was managing his checkbook, managing everything, and we're like, okay, well, so Fred and I had a long private conversation with her, and they really did not want to let him manage anything. And they sat in and they listened to all the other parents talking about, what their loved one was going through pertaining to the actual lesson as we go through them. And 2 weeks later, they've kicked him out of the house. They realize they can't control him.
So it's
There's actually,
probably the relational. They're not alone in this. They're hearing
Right,
yeah,
stories.
right,
So a
exactly.
support group setting is probably what the parents need more than
Correct.
somebody just saying,
the,
"Hey, you're not going to be able to control your son." It's with if you let them come in, you're just making it easy. They're not going to hear that. They really need to
Right.
hear their peers and people who are living through it.
But a lot of times
there's
too,
actually more to the story because the son worked for the father in his own business, and he was driving the father's business truck, and he had let his car go out of, he didn't renew the license of the plates and all that, so he didn't have a car he could use. He was using dad's business truck. And what happened was, and he was a cocaine user, and I don't think in the beginning we said that our program is for adult children over age 18. So when you're in a home as a teenager, that's a different thing. We don't deal with teenagers. We deal with adult addicts and family members. So I wanted to make sure that we understood that. But this kid, and their kid, he's 33, he called his mother, and when she's controlling the checkbook and when you're trying to do all these things, it builds resentment in the addict because what you're telling them without telling them is, I don't trust you to make your own decisions. I have to make them for you. And so that builds resentment. And parents don't understand that. They think they're helping, but what they don't realize is you're actually telling the son or daughter, I don't trust you to make your own decisions. I have to make them for you. And that builds resentment. So this guy one day, the week before, called his mother and was just incredibly abusive to her on the phone. And the dad saw that, and that was it. He'd had enough. After that phone call, he fired his son, said, you can't use the truck anymore. You need to come and get your stuff out of the house. He was actually paying for a house that he was renting. He was paying for this house, but living at home. It's just,
because the
it's just,
parents thought, because the parents thought having him under their wing, they could take care of him. The mother kept saying to us, I don't want when he's ready to go to rehab or once he's ready to get himself cleaned up, I don't want him in bad shape. So I'm going to control this.
Wow.
and
Yeah,
it's just a lie.
that's how
You can't.
strong it is that
It's
with the
so
parents a lot
strong.
of times.
So
But can I say one thing? It's good for parents to come and listen to other parents, but I also recommend also individual counseling because like I know you have helped us a lot and Fred and I have gone through a lot of different counseling because sometimes you need to also have that individual counseling where you help parents learn to walk through this together with each other to bring those emotions together. We're almost on the same playbook.
right.
So I
So
just wanted to put that
what
out.
so as a mom though going through that during that time, we'll address that, but through that time when Jason, y'all are helping them, y'all are doing the very best that you knew how to do for him. What do you think a therapist could have said or done for y'all where you would have listened, appreciated, continued to go back to get some sort of support, or was I don't know if it's denial that it was y'all were in, or what phase it would be if that part of where y'all were, or not just y'all, all these parents. I don't know if it's been defined what it is, but is there something a therapist could do to help support parents when they're going through that? I don't know if that made sense.
I would say the best thing is to offer support from a group, first off, and then
Okay.
second, work with your spouse or work individually with another counselor for your personal stuff, your personal inner
Other
stuff.
stuff than just other stuff than the
Yeah,
addiction piece,
yeah.
the other stuff.
I'll tell you how working with you helped me, and I think this is probably pertinent for any therapist. It wasn't you trying to fix us. It was you providing an independent, non-judgmental outlet to help us sort through what was going on in our own heads
Yeah.
and figure it out on our own. You sort of guided us down that thought process. You didn't fix it. You didn't do anything. You listened. You responded to what you were hearing. And in my case, in the course of doing that, it helped me think through what was actually happening to me. And then I was able to help myself get better. And that's similar to what we do in PAL. We all of us have had similar experience, which makes PAL work because talking to parents who have lived what you're living with, you have credibility that others don't. Um, and the biggest fallacy is for parents is that they can fix it. And what we've learned over the years and what parents come to us and learn is unless it's their decision to go into treatment, you can't help them.
Especially as an adult.
They have to come through it on their own. And the more you try to keep them from the consequences of their bad decision, the easier you're making it on them to continue. And that's a really hard thing. The young lady she's spoken to our group twice. She's the daughter of one of our co-facilitators. And the first time she came, she was very good, but over the 2 to 3 years of sobriety, her insight was just phenomenally
Spot
more
on.
pronounced. And one of the things she said, and Jason said to us to this in his brief period of sobriety a few years back, you guys should have cut me off a long time ago. Okay. And when they had her in their home, and then finally they stopped that. And she said multiple times, in the end, she said something that I think stuck with everybody. You prevent your loved one from the consequences of their behavior, you're allowing that addiction to potentially continue longer than it should. And we tell the parents all the time, if you set these boundaries and you cut them off financially and do all the things like that, if you're doing it because you think it's going to push them into sobriety, you're doing it for the wrong reason. It may happen, and they'll have a better chance of it happening if you put those consequences in place via boundaries. But if you're doing it because you think it's going to fix them and you have that expectation, you're going to be disappointed
Yeah.
because doing this with expectations of them doing something in return always leads to disappointment. If they don't come to it on their own, there's nothing you can do. And consequences speed up that
Yeah.
process. In this young lady's case and in another son, this family was on vacation in the Outer Banks. Their son brought, and it was, brothers and sisters and other extended family. It was an annual vacation. He brought drugs with him and was using the whole time he was there. Well, then he ran out and
Got
he wanted
sick.
his parents to take him somewhere. And they said, we're not taking you anywhere. We're taking you anywhere. We're going to take you to detox and you're going to get this figured out. And they took him to detox. They went back down to the Outer Banks, took him to detox somewhere, I don't know, a couple hours away. Drove back and said, we're going to finish our vacation. Well, when he was done with whatever period of a few days where he got the drugs out of his system, he said, I'm ready to come back. And they said, no, you're not going anywhere. You're going to stay there. And then when we pick you up, you're going to get on the phone and you're not coming back home. You're either going to figure out where you're going to live or you can figure out, if you want to get in rehab, that's your choice. And all the way to drive back to Virginia, he was on the phone calling addiction centers and calling treatment centers, and he found a
Found
place.
himself a bed.
They got home, packed up the car, drove into Pennsylvania, I think, is wherever this
Wow.
place
So a
where he
whole
found.
different approach.
Oh yeah.
It is a whole
Yeah.
different approach.
And it took them probably a good year to come to that conclusion because Mama came crying, kicking and screaming. She wasn't gonna let him go. But after almost a year sitting in these meetings and listening to everybody, she came to the
Well, that's
conclusion.
her
Cried
baby.
her way through it. Oh yeah, she cried her way through it. And
And
they
we had,
called us all the
yeah, we
time.
had multiple phone conversations, and that brings up
But we
another
carried
point
him.
that I think it's important for people to realize. Just like addicts have to reach their limit before they get better, so do parents.
So
Yeah.
do parents. Yeah.
And
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 spouses.
so
And
and
spouses.
spouses.
Yep. Well,
Yeah.
whoever. You
Whoever.
get, and that's what happened with me. When Fred gave me the ultimatum, I think I was ready to hear it because I was fed up.
Tired, weren't you?
I was tired. I was exhausted. And I was sick. I was just sick from being abused and manipulated. And Fred was watching me. I mean, I had to go to desperate measures. I cut Jason off for 2 years. I shut my phone down. I had to get rid of my phone at work. I had to go shopping at the grocery store I went to because I found him waiting for me in the grocery store. So I had to do all kinds of things to learn to protect myself. And now, today, even I had to go just recently go through that again because we don't know what he's doing. We don't know where he is today. We haven't talked to him since January of 2025, and we probably won't.
Yeah.
And that was after a very traumatic thing that he did with his girlfriend. And I think the shame of that, and he knows we know what manipulation was about. And he is the one who decided not to contact us. And we were not going to initiate that contact.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing for parents.
It's very hard,
But
Very hard. I could only imagine.
as you know, Julia.
yeah,
It's so terrible.
and
It's terrible.
Help carry us through that one.
and the depth of the manipulation that they go through to avoid not having their next hit is hard to explain to anybody who's never lived it. The
Yeah.
lying, the manipulation, all of the things that they do, they never take responsibility for it. It's always somebody
And,
else's fault. It
and
wasn't my drugs, it was the guy
right.
that was driving the car, all of this stuff.
And
And
can I say something about this last time around? I was really upset because we let our guard down again with
yeah,
him. And I was so upset about that. And I was so disappointed in that myself for doing that because I had set very strong boundaries. When he got out of prison, I wouldn't even talk to him for, I don't know, a while he was in there because he was so manipulative. And finally, I kept hearing Fred talk to him on the phone. And finally, one day, it was like God said, well, just give him one more chance. So I said, okay, I'll talk to him. And I immediately said, these are my boundaries. I said, and I told him my boundaries. And he respected that. And he said he wouldn't have it any other way. And he kept those boundaries up until this last round when he started slipping back in again, you know, back to his manipulative ways, back to doing the things that he was doing in the past. But we had our eyes closed because we thought we had our son back.
Yeah.
It was all a lie.
And it's just grief and betrayal and all that yucky stuff.
All
Absolutely.
that.
The hamster wheel keeps going. So
And it's hard. It's hard to
You,
live it, you know?
you bring up a really good point about grief, Julia, because what you're doing is you're grieving the death of the person that you knew before addiction took over.
Yeah.
So you're grieving someone who's alive and you're still seeing it. And it's
and
a
it's
different kind of grief.
it's the hardest type. So
It's excruciating.
it is. So we have like 2 minutes left because I
Okay.
had somebody at 10. Thank y'all so much. And I'm going to I tell a lot of my clients about PALS and actually refer them down to y'all's group. And I'm sure from this interview, y'all might be getting, or PALS in general might be getting more folks. We just got to get the information out there about PALS.
Well, use this video with anybody you think will help
Yeah.
because it's important for people to understand it from the parent's perspective.
Right.
We've said it over and over. It's impossible for someone to understand unless you know somebody who's walked it or lived it, or unless you lived it yourself. And again, most of the advice that you hear from well-meaning friends is good, but
Right.
unless you're ready to hear it, it goes on
You're
deaf
not going to
ears.
hear it.
And parents
No.
need support. Parents do, there's not a lot of support for parents out there.
Right.
And I know we got to stop, but we didn't do something I think it's important to lay out the format of how our meetings work. So, we open and close the meetings with prayer. And we have what's called the PAL preamble that kind of just lays out what PAL is and what the focus is and why we do it. We read that every week. Then we have 9 lessons that most of which were developed by Mike Speakman, some of which were taken from Al-Anon or the 12-step programs. And most of them focus on parents. There are a couple that focus specifically on recovery for addicts. One of the most powerful lessons is a lesson about relapse, because relapse is often a part of recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And we learned something called non-judgmental relapse. And then
It is 10 o'clock, Fred.
at the end of the lesson, we go through sharing, and this is what Kathy described earlier, where people share their experience, and then we close in prayer. So that's kind of the format, and there's the interaction is what makes our meetings
I
different.
think so.
And your counselors are welcome to reach out to us anytime.
Oh, well,
Absolutely.
thank you. They will hear that just from y'all. So
All right.
thank y'all so much for your time this morning.
You're welcome.
I just love
Thank you for
Anytime.
doing it. I hope it helps
y'all.
people find
All
the
right.
support they need.
I hope
Thanks,
so too.
Julia.
Thank y'all so much.
Have a
Uh-huh.
great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.